Well, thank you all for coming. I would like to introduce our panelists, and I think they're going to be, first, so in the photo that you see on the screen there, I'm with Maria Yamamoto, and Maria was with the JOI program from actually before it was even conceived, I think, because CGP had contacted a few Japan American societies before the JOI program was put together to see if something like this program would be of interest. And Maria was one of the people they interviewed, and she is the primary person who designed the training for the JOI program. And I think probably to date, much of that program, much of that training that she designed still exists. So this was taken a couple years ago when I saw her in Atlanta. So now I would like to introduce the panelists, and I cannot see you. Naki. Thank you. Naki Anderson. So Natsuki Anderson is associate professor and the chair of the Modern Language Department at Marshall University in West Virginia. She was the year 10 supervisor, and really happy to see Naki, and thank you for joining this panel. Next up is Asami Nakano. Yes, Asami. Asami was a year 12 JOI coordinator here at University of Tennessee, Chattanooga. And she's currently a lecturer at Vanderbilt University in Nashville. Thank you for joining us. Next, we have Takeo Suzuki. Takeo is very unusual in that not only was he a supervisor, he was actually a coordinator in year 2. And he was one of the first brave souls to apply to the JOI program that no one had ever heard of, and we sent him to Arkansas. So in year 2, he was in Little Rock as a coordinator, and had a lot of many interesting experiences there. Then he was hired by the University of Arkansas Fort Smith, where he became a supervisor in year 8. And then he moved here and introduced University of Chattanooga, or University of Tennessee Chattanooga, to the JOI program, where Lucian Ellington then was Asami's supervisor in year 12. Thank you, Takeo. And it's been great to know you for all of these years, nearly 2 decades.
I didn't have no gray hair when I started. So,
yeah,
yes.
I did notice that earlier. I wasn't going to say anything. You know, you could just go get hair coloring. Okay, which I use now. And then last but not least, I have Airi Yamamoto. And Airi was a JOI coordinator at Murray State in year 15 on Western Kentucky, the very, very edge of Western Kentucky. And she's now currently a Japanese language teacher in the Chicago public school system. She's been doing that. You are now 3rd year, right? Oh, 4th year doing that. So kind of a tough situation, but she's doing really well, and she took some students to Japan from those schools. So thank you. Thank you all for participating. Okay, so we don't have a whole lot of time. So I'm going to start off with asking Naki, why did you apply to the JOI program? What was your main objective, main goal?
First of all, I got an assistant professor job at the Marshall University in Huntington, West Virginia, where I have never been to. And because my job was to establish the Japanese major and minor in Huntington, West Virginia. So when I went there as a professor, there's not much going on. So JOI was a perfect opportunity for me to maximize the opportunities in the community and on campus to learn and share about Japanese culture and languages. So I became a supervisor, and we had a JOI coordinator in 2011 to 2013. The first one, Hana Yamada. And we didn't know what we are doing at first. But we had wonderful support from Mari-san or different people, and we actually had so many activities, much more than I first thought it was possible. Especially 2011 was the year of the earthquake. And without having Hana with me, we couldn't host many events we did for the fundraising and working with New York Consulate of General and having a koto player, talk about the disaster. And the 23 high school students from Cabot County in Huntington, West Virginia went to visit Tohoku area and with the Kizuna project. Then 2 months later, a group of high school students from Ibaraki came. So for these students, they never left West Virginia. And that's just life-changing experience for them to be able to go to Japan. We also had small project like local library, free Japanese lesson for middle school, high school. Just for every other week and a few months. But then 5 years later, I was just talking with my students who just came back from study abroad. And I was like, by the way, why did you start learning Japanese? And they tell me, well, I love pop culture and I love anime and games, but I got serious when I took this free language course at the public library. And I was like, which one? We had that at the just downtown. And I'm like, wait, that's JOI. That's ours. We did that. Hana's lesson? And like, yeah. Like, why didn't you tell me that? So our effort of putting the seed in the community really blossomed, and it still continues.
Oh, thank you very much. I was remiss to mention Takeo's current position. He's executive director of the Center for Global Education at UTC. And really, I'm just so proud of you, seeing how you've grown all of these years. Now, why did you apply in Fort Smith, when you were at Fort Smith, to have a JOI coordinator? And also, can you also maybe share, you've got a unique position where you could share the difference between your experience in year 2 and then now, nearly 20 years. I mean, technology has changed as well. No more maps, paper maps. Do people know what paper maps are? Yeah.
Well, that's a big question, so I'll make it very short because everybody knows I speak a lot. But one of the reasons why we applied for JOI program at that time was state of Arkansas was inviting so many Japanese investment. And they asked if we can even start a Japanese Saturday school. And I didn't have enough resource for myself to start Japanese Saturday school, so I was hoping JOI coordinator would help facilitate start a Japanese Saturday school. And successfully in Little Rock, Arkansas, they started with the help from Japanese JOI coordinator. That's one. And also, with the Japanese investment coming, there are so many families coming in. And the community are happy, but also a little bit concerned because of Japanese, not the migration per se, but people coming. So local school superintendent to even the local grocery stores wanted to understand the Japanese culture and customs. So that was a perfect timing for us to have the coordinator help not only the financial investment, but local culture, the local community to establish the welcome environment once they start coming to some city across the state. So that was, I think, one of the reasons why we applied for it. And I think the Yoko did a fantastic job facilitating, working with the Japanese community and the Arkansas state government and local chamber of commerce. She did such a fantastic job. The big difference between second year and this is 19th year, going to 20th year, is probably the name brand is pretty established. When we started as a JOI, nobody knew what this is about. So I have to explain from the scratch. And that was probably the biggest difference. But like you said, the true meaning of this JOI program is to provide and extend the grassroots relationship. And as you know, that I met my even wife from this program. So I really owe JOI program, not only my professional career, but personal career. But there are so many great grassroots relationships happening, not only because of JOI, but beyond. The legacy the program leaving behind is beyond the description, I think. So I would like to say thank you for having me almost 20 years ago when I didn't have a gray hair. But I really like to help as much as I can, even for the future coordinators and program expansion.
Thank you so much. I'd like to turn to the coordinators. Asami-san, can you share a memorable experience, one or two, with the audience?
Yes, so I came to Chattanooga in 2013 for the first time. And I was very impressed with very warm Southern hospitality in this area, in this city. And I met so many students at K-12 schools and universities. And some students are never seeing Asians, never seeing Japanese, but they are very curious. And I had so much activity with them. I get to know them. And it was just a very wonderful experience. And the local community, we had some Japanese community, and they always helped me for my outreach. And I'm so happy that we could do it together, not only me, but local community was very supportive in this area.
I think I've heard a lot of past coordinators mention that one of the unexpected roles that they played was to connect with Japanese in the area. And then a lot of times, a lot of the Japanese didn't have that connection either. And so because of the presence of the JOI coordinator, they could be that catalyst. And I think that is important too. Yeah. Airi-san, how about you? What are some of your memorable experiences?
So I'd like to share one of the events I created during the JOI was Thousand Cranes project for Marshall County High School. So sadly, there was a school shooting at Marshall County High School in Benton, Kentucky, 2018. And 2 students were killed and 14 others were injured. It was such a huge news and broke local people's heart very bad. Everyone looked for something they can do for their family who lost their kids, for the school and the community in Benton. So this project was where I traveled many different communities and made a 1,000 paper crane symbol, a memorial, senbazuru, it's called senbazuru, and it's big, and for the Marshall County High School. It was in the session I told for the people who participate, in Japan, cranes are symbolic of happiness, long life, and peace. Also, people also make senbazuru for wishing the cure of illness or world peace. So the little kids to adults participated. Probably more than 800 local people made small a crane. It was a really hard. It took a lot of time, but we finally made it. It was such a huge. It brought huge positive impact to local community. It was even on local newspapers and TV broadcast. And Senbazuru is still in Marshall County High School Common Hall. Little while later, the principal contacted me and she said, her student, my students still ask me, and the local people who visit the school still ask me what Senbazuru represent, and the people are moved by knowing what it means. And she also said it was definitely helped to heal people's heart. So that's the most memorable experience, and it's very interesting making connection to what happened in local and Japanese culture.
Thank you. I'm sure that the local people truly appreciated all of the effort of the different citizens of the towns around Marshall, Benton County, to do that. Thank you. So I think one of the themes of this symposium, of course, is why JOI matters. And so I'd like to ask the supervisors, what kind of experiences have you had since your JOI coordinator that shows why this JOI program matters.
I think the biggest achievement is to establish the sustainable cultural project and programs instead of just one-time culture presentation, just one visit. Instead, since I had the very first JOI coordinator, 2011, I helped to bring 3 more JOI coordinator to the state of West Virginia. And finally, last year, we established the full-time position as a Japanese outreach coordinator at Marshall University, so 2020. So we are ready to continue this effort. But of course, Corona happens. So what do? Last year, one of the annual event we have been doing is the Cabot County Summer Japanese Immersion Camp with the elementary school students for 1 week. We have actually 3 weeks of different sets of students, so about 50 students come, and it's totally free, and we even feed them, and they learn Japanese and cultural activities. So I only support from the side usually, but last year I couldn't go home because of Corona. So, and they had to do it on Zoom, so they really asked me to help them, so I'm gonna do it. And I did it introducing the sports kendama. That's my new hobby. Kendama, it's not like the traditional kendama that I knew of. That's really slippery, and I can only do it a few times. But this American company called Sweets have this really good grip quality kendama for sports kendama, and it's a cool thing. It's like a street performers, like the kids who have skateboard has the kendama on their back pocket, and it's a cool thing. It's niche, but once they get into it, it's really neat. And my whole family has a whole series of kendama. Now, community, we get together in the park and do kendama. We have a kendama club. So I think it's one of the new thing we can get into. I just wanted to share that because we're always looking for ideas, right? We did the pop culture, we did the shodo. What do we do next? So kendama is one of the things.
Okay, Joy, you're 19 people. Learn how to do kendama. Contact Sweets, the Sweets company. Get a hold of Naki. She can give you a connection.
Yes, discount only for $10 each student.
Actually, I have to say, I can't remember the name of the middle school near Atlanta where they teach Japanese, but a JOI coordinator went up there. And actually, unrelated to JOI coordinator, they actually had a kendama club. Yoshi, I'll connect with you later. I can't remember the name of the middle school, but I was shocked. This was probably 10 years ago, so even before you, Naki, discovered.
Wow.
Yeah. So
it's neat, but that's one of the things that's continuously we are doing, and several JOI, even from Virginia, came and helped our summer camp so that they can learn how to do it and go back to their community and do it. So we were still doing it every year. Sounds like I have to get involved every year from now on, but we will do it, and we are so excited still. Like after all these years, I still get new ideas, and with the JOI, newer people, young people come and give me more ideas, and yeah, I can keep myself young. I love it.
thank you. How about you, Takeo?
Well, I don't know how to do kendama, so I need to learn how to do it now. But I think the most important thing is I'm very impressed about the presentation that how JOI program expanded from the south, the Midwest, the mountain region. This region, like when I was supervising in the city or even in the state, there are no more than 500 Japanese in the entire state at the time, Japanese. So without the coordinator assistant, people will not have a direct contact, not only Japanese culture, but Japanese person. Of course, they can learn so many culture from the screens or TV, but having a real person in a real setting make a big difference, especially if you are being through the K-12 students. Completely different perspectives. Also, these JOI coordinators bridge the tiny gap between Japanese culture and American culture, and the American student get to understand the similarity and differences, especially the similarity side. They're happy to see the Pokemon card, both in Japanese and English. And some even kids do not know Pokemon is actually from Japan. For them, it doesn't really matter. And to me, it doesn't really matter. So I'm very happy that JOI is connecting those, and Japanese culture is becoming kind of the world culture, not stay only in Japan. I think that part is important. Japan is such a small country with such a small population. And I think it's important for them to understand, appreciate how we value our tradition. And then in the end, I really believe that will bring more peace. And I'm cutting so many short tangent story right here, but I think that will bring a lot of peaceful mindset, which we really need, especially post-COVID environment. But the expansion JOI is quite critical because the people do not have access to Japanese people, Japanese culture in those cities.
Thank you. One of the things that I remember Marshall and at Fort Smith, I think at Marshall we went to the Huntington Kitchen, and that was the first time. So Huntington Kitchen, what was the name of the British chef who helped the Huntington School District develop a more nutritional diet?
Jamie Oliver.
Oh, that's right, Jamie Oliver, who's
Huntington happened to be one of these one of the poorest states. And yeah, British chef found that Huntington is the worst place to get fed at the school lunch. So he came, started this Huntington Kitchen in the community place in downtown, and invited people to get lessons how to cook. So Hana Yamada, who happened to be a good cook, and she did series of Japanese cooking lessons, and that impacted some of the lunch menus as well.
right, and it was in downtown Huntington, not on the campus of Marshall. So it really involved a lot of community members and students as well. So yeah, and then I remember one of the stories I remember, year 2, we were traveling with a CGP staff as well, and we went to Eudora, Arkansas.
Right.
And you had the mechanic who helped you when your car broke down. He actually fed us deep fried turkey, and I think it was the first time. And we had, I think, a couple of Japanese traveling with us, and it was their first time to have deep fried turkey and all of the fixings. This wasn't Halloween or anything, but because of meeting Takeo, this mechanic actually then became interested in Japan and stayed in touch with you while you were nearby. And often, I don't know, did we have email back then?
I did, yes, I did. But Eudora, Arkansas is the capital of catfish business. And I was actually on the way to visit New Orleans Council at the time. My car broke down in the middle of nowhere. You don't see anywhere but a cotton field and wheat field. And then this guy just fixed it. And I even didn't have money to pay for it. It cost about $600 at the time. I didn't have money, and he just fixed it. And I successfully went to the Council General's, I think the end of year party. And then we went there, and then they never seen Japanese, period. Never, ever. So I quickly became very famous, and I met the mayor, I met the county judge. I became so famous, and I visited this county so often and talk about Japanese culture. And the school district loved me talking about Kansai Ben even. And then, no offense, but in that Eudora County, that everybody say chow chow means no. I told them how to speak Japanese in my way because I'm from Kobe. And they really enjoyed it. But the tiny relationship, the spontaneous relationship can happen. And those are the things that it's very difficult to happen these days because everything electronic. But the in-person make a lot of big influence on somebody's life. And I think they even sent some students to the JET program later on from the high school program. The high school student went to University of Arkansas starting to start the Japanese language. And then he passed the second level Japanese proficiency test. I think he went on to participate in the JET program. So you never know how things happen in their life. They never saw, this person especially didn't think about going to Japan at all before my car broke down. So
I know, I'm sure he didn't. I just still remember that. And also how you helped Walmart and Seiyu, develop a relationship as well, yeah.
Right, so I had a really good relationship with the Arkansas Economic Development Office, so they offered me to translate quite a few language programs. So my Yoko and I translate the Japanese language, driving test into Japanese language. Also, when they have a delegation coming, they ask us to be a translator. So when Seiyu CEO came, I was there to translate between President Lee Scott and some other executive over there. Also, if you like golf, the Walmart hosts LPGA. So I was happy, very fortunate that I was a translator for Yamazaki, Yamamoto, right? I was translator for the professional golfer for a while. I could do this because it was such a small state, but it was very, very interesting experience. I personally had as a coordinator at the time.
And one last story about Arkansas. I think Yoko Kawata, your year 8 coordinator, is probably the only coordinator who has something published in and housed at the Library of Congress, right? You want to explain? This must have been very impactful because I still remember. So Fort Smith was the first place where they actually had a hanging.
Yes.
It's very morbid, but it's a national monument or
Yes, park, I think.
Park, and so Yoko translated the information about that site into Japanese, and it's now at the Library of Congress. So, you know, the JOI coordinators year 19, if you have a small national park or some kind of oddball memorial location, you translate it into Japanese, submit it to the Library of Congress, and then you can put that in your resume that you have something.
And on the top of that, thanks to her work, now they are working to build a U.S. Marshall Museum, which is about a $300 million project. And then I know they have some Japanese sponsorship. I'm not going to tell which company, but there's Japanese sponsorship. I think partially because of Yoko's translation, transfer to some information in the company in the state of Arkansas. That was amazing. Yeah.
So really, the coordinators have no idea what kind of impact they will have. And I think really the foresight of CGP, you know, of believing in the impact of the individual, of this grassroots is really key. And I think this is really proof of that. So Asami and Airi, please share, what do you think, I know you're still in touch with your host sites. What are some legacies that you feel like you've left behind?
So the two activities remain in that area in Murray, Kentucky are International Kite Festival and Cooking Club. So for the International Kite Festival, I worked with local arboretum and the agriculture department, and we created International Kite Festival for first time. So the local kids visit the festival to make own kite and visit the culture booth to learn different culture. Even the international student had a culture demonstrations out there. It was a huge success, and we brought more than 600 local people on that day. Now the event is run by ICALA, International Culture and Language Association in Murray State University, Japan Club, and other international students. I'm so glad it's keep doing that. And for the Japan Cooking Club, I created the Cooking Club to bring more people to get interested in Japanese culture and food. Of course, everybody likes food, and it was a huge success. We tried to make sushi, karaage, okonomiyaki, something they cannot really find at the local restaurant. And now, Japan Club students still go visit many different schools and continue teaching how to make Japanese traditional dishes.
Yeah, food is always, is there a, not nomi communication, but something with food communication?
Hi. So something I left behind is that after I finished 2 years, I could stay another 2 years as a graduate student at the University of Tennessee, Chattanooga. and I could create a Japanese language program for next 2 years. So we did the Japanese class officially. So 3 of my students went to Japan while I was teaching Japanese, and 3 of them actually went to work in Japan as a JET program and also English teacher. And recently I got email from one of my former students. He got like another business job in Japan, and he happened to be in Tono, which is sister city of Chattanooga. So I'm very happy for what they did. And also, by the time I leave, Takeo-san came. So, you know, the program is in
And
very good hands.
we had Yumi came.
Yes,
Joy, so
and Yumi came as another JOI coordinator, JOI 16, I believe. And she recently married. And I'm also married. So something that happened to both of us, really good thing.
Well, thank you. I think we are just about at our 30 minutes. And I thank you very much for listening. We have many, many, many stories. I just loved going to each of the sites and listening to what they've done, and also eating. I enjoyed eating at every different site. I remember David, I think Carpenter is here. I think, yes, I remember the brownie, that thing that you introduced me to. I'll never forget that brownie dish. So I think that's how I remember all the different JOI sites. So I'm happy to talk about the food if you want to come up to me later. But thank you. I really appreciate hearing your stories.
thank you very much.
And having you share with the audience. And I know that the other JOI coordinators, the other supervisors, please share among yourselves during the reception and dinner. Thank you. Thank you very much.
Gentlemen, round of applause for panel 1.